Hello, boys and girls. Mr. Paust here. I'm very excited. We're going to learn about snails. So it's called creeping land snails. Snails have always been very fascinating to me. Um, Whenever I think of a snail, I think of its long, weird eyes. Hopefully, learn about that today. All right. Taking it slow, the motto of a snail. The snail is one of the slowest animals in the world. Some snails can creep only about 2 inches, 5 centimeters in 1 minute. At that rate, it would take them 22 days to travel 1 mile. Many people could easily walk that far in 22 minutes. More than 30,000 kinds of snails live on land. Even more kinds live in oceans, lakes, ponds, and other bodies of water. Heading out. As a snail creeps slowly along, it carries its shell on its back. The shell protects the animal's soft, boneless body. The snail's head sticks out of an opening in the front of the shell. On top of his head are 2 long tentacles with tiny eyes at the end. Oh, they're called tentacles, like an octopus. And that's where their eyes are. Okay. The snail can wave the tentacles around to see what's going on. Super cool. All right. Snail's head also has 2 shorter tentacles that are used for feeling and smelling. Yes, I can see them. Almost look like a silly mustache. So the shorter tentacles for feeling and smelling. Got the shell. See the diagram. Got the eyes. Let's see. Okay. I can see like the little dots for their eyes. 1 big foot. A snail has only 1 foot. It is attached to the animal's head. When a snail sticks its head out of its shell, its foot comes out too. The snail uses foot to creep along the ground very slowly. The bottom of a snail's foot is called a sole, just like the bottom of a person's foot. And there's the diagram of the head, and there's the foot. Sliding on slime. A snail can crawl over rocks, sticks, and logs. How? Its body makes a thick, slippery liquid called slime. The slime makes it easier for the snail's foot to slide over rough objects. As the snail creeps along, it leaves behind a silvery slime trail. Slime isn't just slippery, it's sticky too. A snail can climb up and down a tree or a plant stem without falling because its foot sticks to the gooey liquid. And there's the slime. It looks like a booger. Don't dry out. Land snails live in damp, shady spots like woods, leafy gardens, and piles of rocks. They need to live in places like these because their bodies are made mostly of water. If they don't stay cool and moist, they will die. Wow, interesting fact. They have to stay cool and moist. A snail's slime helps keep its body from drying out. Damp dinners. Snails come out in damp, drizzly weather or at night to look for food. They feed on grass, leaves, and mushrooms. They like to eat lettuce, cabbage, and spinach from vegetable gardens too. Sound pretty healthy. Some kinds of snails also eat tiny insects, worms, and other snails. Wow. Inside a snail's mouth is a tongue-like part covered with thousands of tiny sharp teeth. A snail uses it like a saw to shred its food into tiny bits. And right there, you can see it snacking on a mushroom. A long sleep. A cold winter can freeze a snail's moist body. A snail that lives in a place that gets cold has a way of surviving, however. It pulls its head and foot into its shell. It closes up the opening with slime, leaving just a small hole for air to breathe. Then it sleeps inside until spring. Snails live all over the world. Those that live in places with hot, dry summers close up their shells and sleep until cooler weather comes in the fall. Okay. Hiding from enemies. Here we go. I want to know about some enemies that snails have. Shells are not just a place for snails to sleep in through bad weather. Snails also use their shells to hide from enemies. Most kinds of animals hunt and eat snails. Birds, frogs, beetles, snakes, and mice are just a few of them. A snail tries to stay safe from these enemies by pulling its head and foot into its shell. People in many countries think that soft, tender snails are a tasty dish, too. The snails are often cooked with garlic and butter. Ugh. No thanks for me. A shell for life. We got snail eggs, snails hatching, and baby snails. Baby snails hatch from eggs. Each baby snail already has a tiny shell when it comes out of its egg. That is an awesome fact. I thought they defined these shells. The shell will get bigger as a small animal grows. So it really is attached to their body. Huh. The snail will always carry the shell on its back as it moves slowly through life. Giant African snail. That is a huge snail. Some land snails are only as big as a grain of rice. Others, like the giant African snail, can grow up to 15 inches, 38 centimeters long. That's bigger than this book. So we know that 12 inches is a foot, so a foot and 3 inches. It's pretty big for the giant African snail. All right. A world of invertebrates. An animal that has a skeleton with a backbone inside its body is called a vertebrate. Yes. Mammals, birds, fish, reptiles, and amphibians are all vertebrates. We are too. We got that spine behind our neck and down our back. An animal that does not have a skeleton with a backbone inside its body is an invertebrate. More than 95% of all animals on Earth are invertebrates. Some invertebrates, such as insects, spiders, have hard skeletons called exoskeletons on the outside of their bodies. Other invertebrates, such as worms and jellyfish, have soft, squishy bodies with no exoskeletons to protect them. Here are 4 invertebrates that are closely related to snails. All right, the relatives. Getting to know the relatives. Like snails, each one of them has soft, boneless bodies and a hard shell. Unlike snails, each of these animals has a 2-part shell that can open and close. The Pacific oyster, giant clam, blue mussel, and bay scallop. I can see the resemblance. In our glass, we got backbone, a group of connected bones that run along the backs of some animals, such as dogs, cats, and fish, also called the spine. Shell, a hard covering that protects some animals. Slime, a sticky, slippery goo that a snail uses to help it move. And we got tentacles, body parts that grow out of a snail's head and are used for seeing, feeling, and smelling. All right, boys and girls, I hope you enjoyed learning about the snail, and I hope that you have a wonderful day. I'll see you soon.